Welcome to this little guide about how to do direct indexing yourself simply using Excel. And it contains a step-by-step guide of how you actually do it. Direct indexing is one of three major ways to do passive investments against a stock index such as the S&P 500. There are generally three ways to do passive index investments. It is either through a mutual fund, it is through an ETF, so electronic traded fund, or you can do it directly yourself, which is then called direct indexing. In direct indexing, you simply buy the right share of the different companies that is needed to mirror the stock index that you are trying to follow. The first step is, of course, to figure out what stocks you need to buy and what percentage of your portfolio needs to be associated with them. The easiest way to find that data is actually to take the list of stocks and the share of the portfolio from one of the ETFs. The way I typically do it is I look for the S&P 500 stock index, and I want to see it per market cap. So I search this on Google, and I'll choose one of them. So here you have a website that provides the S&P 500 companies with their portfolio share. In this case, it is actually from one of the largest ETFs that index against the S&P 500. It's called SPY. What I normally do is I simply grab the data and then copy that in to start my Excel sheet. So I grab all the data, I do copy paste in Excel, and then I will go to Excel in order to set this one up. So in Excel, I simply do copy paste and then insert the data. Now the data comes in with a lot of formatting, so I prefer to change this to simple data so that doesn't mess up the calculations. First thing I do is adjust the width so I can see what we're dealing with. The next thing I do is actually to test that the data is clean. There's different ways to do it. I find the easiest and quickest way is basically to make sure that the data we have here is something I can calculate with. So I do a simple calculation. I take a data and multiply that by 1. And if the data that shows here looks like right data, then I know it's ready for calculation. Simply copy that across the different fields. And you can see here that it seems like the portfolio data is good. However, the pricing data is not good, and also the percent change data is not good. So I need to clean these up before I can use that for calculations. So let me take a look at the price data. What is the wrong thing that's wrong with this one? Well, when I look at this, I can actually see that there are 2 empty spaces in front of the number, and that is why you cannot calculate with it. So what I need to do with this one is clean this one up and remove those spaces. I found the easiest way to do the cleanup is to copy the dirty data into its own column and then clean it and then move it back once it's cleaned. That's what I'm going to do over here. So right now we have the pricing data, and I need to convert that. The easiest way to convert these numbers and take out the 2 spaces is to use a function under data. It's called text to columns, where you can use what's called a fixed width to set the parameters of how to split the 2 empty spaces from the number. So basically, I use my cursor, set it right in front of the number, click finish, and now you can see I have taken the data and separated that from the empty spaces, which you can, of course, not see here. I can test if this works by doing the same test. So the number times 1. I have a correct number. I'm going to test it for all of them. Yeah, looks good. So now this data set has been cleaned up, and then I simply copy it back on top of the original dirty data. Top of prices, paste it in. There we go. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the percentage change. If I don't need the data, you can, of course, omit it, but let me just show you how you do it with this one. I do the same process as before, copy it into another column. I look at it. Here, I need to take the parentheses in the start and the parentheses in the end out. However, you can see here that some of the numbers are okay. So I cannot use the same thing for all cells, which means that I have to, first of all, separate out which of the ones are dirty and which of the ones are not dirty. The way to do that is using a sort function. So in this situation, I'm simply going to sort it after the column with the percentage change. So I mark the whole table out. I go to the function up in the menu bar called sort, and then I want to sort it after the column in the column H or T. It's the same thing. So let me go to H, do OK, and now everything has been sorted after that one. In this case, you can actually see here we have the good numbers, and then you have the one that starts with the percentages down here. So what I do next is I mark out the ones I need to correct. And I use the same kind of function as before. I'm just using two separations. So the parentheses starting and ending goes into two different spaces. So text to columns, fixed width, put my cursor where they need to split it up, here and here. And I press finish. And now you can see these are split into three columns. I will then grab the middle column and drag that back in over the dirty data. So I have one column with the correct data. There we go. Then I simply do a sort again, so I have it in the right order. So let's sort. This time I'm going to sort it out for its row number B. Column number B. And in this case, I have all the data back. There's one more thing. I included the titles wrongly, so I'm going to move them to the top by simply copy or cutting and pasting it up into the top again. So now I have a clean data set. I just need to move this over to original data, and then we are done with cleaning up the data. There you go. So next step is then to try to set up your portfolio. So in order to set it up, I normally use this kind of spreadsheet. You can see the cleaned up data in this part. This is the data we're just looking at. Now, the next thing you need to do is then build your own portfolio. So first of all, you have to write up what type of investment budget you're going to use. Because, of course, if you have a Microsoft share and it needs to be 7.14% of your portfolio, you want to know what that is. And that's what I do here. So I say 7.14% times my investment budget of $1 million. That means that I have to buy for 71,400, given that this is the price per share, right? So what I do is I take my percentage portfolio, multiply that with the investment budget. That gives me my investment size. And then in order to figure out how many shares to buy, I take my investment dollar and divide that by the price. And this is what's happening over here. So you can see here, investment size in Microsoft divided by this, the share price today gives me how many shares I need to buy. And in this case, it's 167.38. However, you cannot buy half shares. That's why it needs to be rounded. So I use a rounding formula so I can see the actual number of full shares that I need to buy. In order to follow what the actual cost will be, I do also an actual investment dollar calculation. That is simply taking the 167 and multiplying that with the price. And that is what you see in the next column in the actual investment dollars. So the plan is to buy for 71,400. what I actually need to pay would be 71,238. So it's slightly less than the my budget entails. I basically then do that for all the other stocks. So you can see here my formula in order to copy everything down is T3, which is the budget I have, and then multiply that with E3, which is the Microsoft portfolio share. When this is copied down, that is why I use these dollar signs, because that means that when I copy the formula down, it always referred to investment budget, but this one moves down. And you can see that if you look at this one takes the share for Apple and multiply that with the same budget. So that's what the formula looks like. And then I basically copy this one all the way down by double clicking on the little lower square in the lower right corner of the cell. And that's how I get it to fill out in the rest of the rows. I do the same thing for the number of share that I need to buy. So you can see the formula here. We are taking the investment dollar amount and dividing that with the actual purchase price today. And that is how I get the formula for the number of shares I need to buy. I use the rounded one, as you can see here. So these formulas can also be copied down in the same way. You can see them all the way here. So that's it. So after you've done that, you will then know how many shares you need to buy, and you have the tickers over here, the symbols over here, which you can punch in your investment account in order to buy the equivalent number of shares. Now, let's say I had a budget of 200,000. This one, of course, automatically adjusts when it's set up like this. So now you can see how many shares, given a budget of 200,000 that you need to own. Now, with a budget of 200,000 and 500 shares, there's actually a number of shares that you don't buy because of their portfolio share is so small. So the market cap versus the others are so small. I put up a little formula in my spreadsheet where I actually count how many of the 500 companies in the S&P 500 do I not need to be buying shares for, given my budget. In this case, if I have a budget of 200,000, there are 80 stocks that I don't need to buy because they have such a low share that it equals up to less than 1 share. Now, this one, in order to optimize the investments, I've actually manually gone in and added a few shares to a few stocks in order to buy for most of my budget. So let me show you what it looked like before I did the adjustment. So when I set this up originally, this is the investment budget and this is the actual investment. So I still had about almost $3,000 that I did not invest. But you, of course, can add shares to this one to spend most of your budget. The way I do it is to look at, first of all, the shares that I haven't bought yet. So I'm trying to add some of the shares that I haven't bought in order to fulfill my budget target. In order to do so, I find the easiest way is basically to map out the whole sheet you have with your shares, and then try to figure out which ones of them have you not bought shares in. And that's pretty simple. You basically sort by the actual number of shares that you plan to buy, which is in column L for this one. So for L, smallest first, then you can actually see that this has been rearranged. So you can see that these companies have 0 in their purchasing recommendation based on this one. So let's try to do it again. Sort column B, or sort column with actual number of shares. See what happened here. Do one more time. So I'm going to sort it after actual investment. Shares, there we go. Smallest to largest, there we go. So now I have the list here again. So what I typically also want to do is I want to rank order them in terms of which of these ones I haven't bought had the largest portfolio share and percentage. So I don't buy the smallest, but I buy the biggest of the ones I don't have a purchase on yet. So that's why what I do is then I actually sort the zeros up by the ones that have 0 purchases in their number of shares. And I rank these ones by the portfolio share. So sort, in this case, by portfolio share. Share, where do we have it? It's up here somewhere. There we go. All right. So now I can actually start adding shares based on the percentage. Oh, by the way, I can see here that again, I chose smallest to largest. I want to choose largest to smallest. That makes it easier. So now you can see here that the largest portfolio share that I have not bought would be Booking Holdings. And what I do is then I say, all right, I have almost 3,000. Can I buy this one? No, this costs 3,006 for a share, but I can for sure buy the next one. So I'll put 1 on this one. So now I'm also purchasing Chipotle. And when I do that, you can see I only have $60 left in my budget to my target. So I made this little adjustment. When I do that, I typically mark that out with a color so I can see where I have done manual adjustments. And let me bring back the overall overview again in a ranked order. So I map out my table. I sort it, data sort, and this one I will sort after the number ranking we had from the start. And I will need to do that from smallest to largest, and then we're back in the original view. So now I have all my companies, I have my shares, and I'm using most of my budget against I'm investing for almost close to my total investment budget, just short of $60. I also write down a few interesting information about my portfolio. So first of all, I have a number of how many stocks I'm not buying. That's nice to know. And how much of them they are in total of the total amount. So there's 50% of companies I don't buy a share in percentages. I'm also following the variance. So how much different is my portfolio versus my target portfolio over here? And in this case, the average distance from my portfolio to the target portfolio is 0.029. So it's very, very little difference. So it's almost 100% the same. So now I know I have a good index setup, and I know what shares I need to buy for what companies, and I can go ahead and buy those shares. So I have my homemade indexing. The last thing I have left to talk about is actually how you balance your portfolio. One of the advantages with direct investments is that you can do some tax harvesting. And in order to either balance your portfolio ever so often, so let's see, at least once a year, or if you want to do tax harvesting, you of course have to look at the price you bought the shares for versus the new price. So let me show you how that can be done. So in order to balance your portfolio or do some tax harvesting, the thing you would need is the new price, new share price. And let's say for a minute that Microsoft has gone down from 426 to 400. And this is not percentages. So let me just format this into numbers. So 400, then I can do a difference, which is then the current price. Sorry. It's equal current price minus the original purchase price, which means that I have a loss of 26. Now, when I have that for all my shares, then I can decide whether I want to tax harvest this one, because if you realize the loss, you can deduct that against your taxes. So when you've done that, imported all the prices, you do this little formula, and then you know which shares are ripe for tax harvesting if you want to take advantage of that during one specific tax year. The other thing you might need to do at least once a year is to rebalance the portfolio, because if the share price has gone up, it's become worth more, then the portfolio share will be changing. Now, if the portfolio share is changing, then you'll have to import the new portfolio percentage. And you will then have to compare the old portfolio percentage with the number of shares with the new portfolio percentage, and then calculate the new number of shares. And that will tell you which shares you need to buy. Typically, it's buy more of. So the balancing will typically mean that you need to buy some more of certain types of stocks in order, or sell some of them to buy some new in order to rebalance it. That's the other task that you need to do typically after or each year. You need to do this kind of rebalancing, so you make sure that you are still hitting as close to the original index that you are trying to reach. So that is actually how you do direct indexing if you want to do it yourself. If you have questions about how to do direct indexing yourself, you're welcome to post them underneath here, or you reach out to me directly. Hopefully this was helpful, and that is why I was making the video. So good luck with doing your indexing.